girls trip, and here's how. So a few years back, my cousin's birthday was coming up, and so she calls me and asks me, do I want to go out the country with her and some other girls for her birthday? And I'm like, of course. At this point, the Airbnb was already chosen, and my cousin sends me a price breakdown of how much I would need to send to go on a trip. So I send my half of the money, and as soon as I send my half of the money, we were all invited to join this group chat. In order to join a group chat, you have to send your money. So I do think that's a good tip for anybody who is planning a girls trip in the future, just to make sure y'all make it out the chat. But before we really get into the story, some added context about me. I am not someone who is going to be really interactive in a group chat. I am more of a, just let me know how much money I need, what we're wearing, blah, 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 like that. The excursions, itinerary, just let me know those things, because I don't really have time to sit there and be involved in a group chat. That's just what it is. As soon as this chat was created, one of the birthday girls, keep in mind, there are about 3 to 4 birthday girls on this trip. But one of the birthday girls asked a question, and she asked us, do we care more about staying in a luxury Airbnb or having more money for excursions? When this question is asked, I don't say anything because I don't really care either way. So majority of the girls in the chat said that they would rather spend more money on excursions, and then the birthday girls start sending in different options for other Airbnbs. The Airbnb was picked before the full group chat was made, which I believe contributed to how smoothly this whole trip ran. The first Airbnb was really nice. The pool area was nice. I think we all had like our own rooms, and it just looked nice. And it came with a private chef, so we just had to buy groceries, and someone was going to come and cook for us. That Airbnb was branded and everything. Very nice. So then they start sending in Airbnb options that is going to be cheaper, so we'll have more money for activities and excursions. During this part, I just voted on the next Airbnb, the Airbnb that I felt like was the next best thing, and I chose a condo. And then some other communications I had was I was asking, were we going to be choosing an Airbnb near the beach? So we ended up choosing an Airbnb, and it was an okay Airbnb, meaning it was good enough to stay in, but it just wasn't as nice as the first one. And it didn't come with a private chef, but it was still like a really big house, just not as nice as the first one. This one also claimed to have like a private beach, which it did, but you had to like kind of walk down to get to the private beach, which was fine. We did end up going one day for like the first day for a few minutes, but we'll get to that part. Once the Airbnb is chosen, I kind of go ghost from the chat. Like, I'm still there, but I'm not really interacting in like daily conversations with the group chat. So then a couple days later, I peek my head back in and I asked them like, hey, can I get a confirmation of what we're wearing so I know what clothes to buy? The response I get is to wear white for the birthday dinner and to get a bathing suit that incorporates the colors of the flag of the country that we are going to be visiting. Once I get a rundown, I go back to living my life, and the ladies in the group continue to talk about the trips, and they are currently making plans. Me, I don't really care what the plans are. Y'all do what y'all want. It's y'all birthday. I'm down for the ride. I only had one thing I really wanted to do in this country. 1 or 2 things I really wanted to do in this country. So as long as those things were on the list, or at least one of them were on the list, I don't really care. Also, I want to note that I've been to that country before as a child, and some of the touristy things I did as a kid, I'm not looking to do as an adult. So that's also why I was like, I don't really care what we do. So this is me popping in to tell the ladies hey and just say like, hey, I'm excited for the trip, because I want to interact some, but I'm not going to really be in the planning process. Next up on the list is coming up with the list of excursions we're going to do while we're on this trip. So I sent over the excursions that I'm willing to participate in and the excursions I'm not willing to participate in, so that we can come up with a solid plan and itinerary of what we're going to do in this country. After I do that, I leave the chat again. Well, not leave the chat, but I go ghost from the chat again, and then I pop back in and I ask them, hey, can I get a final itinerary of what we're going to be doing? They send one over to me. And here is the itinerary. After this, someone asked in the chat, what are we wearing? Just to confirm, like, okay, so originally the birthday girls were supposed to be wearing white and everybody else nude and brown. Once this person asked us in the chat, everyone is kind of confused with what we're wearing. They're like, wait, I thought we were all wearing white. I thought this, I thought that. So nobody really knew what colors we were officially wearing. So please keep in mind about the what we are wearing conversation, because it's going to come back later in a very funny way. The confusion of it all is definitely going to come back. So after this, I peeked my head back up into the chat. I didn't say anything when they were asking what we're going to be wearing. I just saw the conversation. Then after this, I peeked my head back up in the chat and I asked them, how much money do I need to bring for the excursions? They tell me it's based on the excursions that I decide to do. And I say, okay, cool. I was asking that question to gauge exactly how much money I needed to bring. After this, that was like one of my last communications in the chat. From then on, I sent in my flight information because they hired a driver. I was not involved in the hiring of the driver process. Like I said, I just let the birthday girls do the planning, and I'm just down for the ride, babes. Now here's where the shenanigans start, okay? This is when things get, weird, okay? Not weird, but this is like where my confusion really just was like. But anyway, let's get into it. So we're getting closer to the trip, so I'm communicating more because I just want to make sure that I am up to date with everything. So I sent a note in the chat and I asked them, hey, we may not have cell service when we get to this country. Please remember this part. Please remember this part. I say, we may not have cell service when we get to this country. Can we pick a spot to meet up at in the airport? The response I got from one of the girls was, huh? Like, what do you mean? So you're telling me I need an international phone plan? And I'm like, I just respond because I don't know if she's going to need an international phone plan. I don't think you do. But I respond to her and I ask her, I say, well, we just need a spot to meet up at because we land at different times and we may not have cell service. Other people respond to my ask kind of like with the mortified face, and they're like, what? No cell service? And in my mind, I'm thinking, you cannot guarantee that you're going to have service when you go to another country. It's no guarantee. You don't know if you're going to have service until you get there. Some phone companies are really good, but if you've never been to a certain country with your phone service, you don't know if you're going to have problems or not. So I respond back and I say, oh yeah, we're not going to have any. When I really meant to say, like, you probably won't have data, but you'll have cell service. But the data to be with iMessenger and all that stuff is... So I responded back and I was like, we probably have Wi-Fi at the airport, but I don't think we should bank on that. I'm like, we really shouldn't rely on technology. We should have a concrete spot to meet up at. So this is also when I tell them to download an offline map of the country. That way they can navigate on their phones without having any cell service. Because again, it's not guaranteed that you're going to have service in another country. So they decide, like, okay, we're just going to make sure, like, we have WhatsApp. And I'm like, well, does WhatsApp work offline? Because I'm not sure. I still don't know if WhatsApp work offline because I didn't try it. But also, I called my cousin and she was on the phone with one of the girls. So I have to give out names because the story's about to really get started. This was like a long introduction. So please like, comment, and I will be uploading a part 2 to the story because it gets good and we're going to go day by day of all the days we were in this country. How I went from a hero to a zero on a girl's trip, part 2. At this point in the story, I call my cousin who was at one of her friend's house, who is also one of the main girls who was planning everything, orchestrating the whole trip. She really came in and was doing a bulk of the planning. Her and the other birthday girl. So I'm going to give this girl, her name is going to be Mariah. Okay, so my cousin is at Mariah's house and they are, just discussing the trip or whatever. So I call, and Mariah was one of the ones who I was really communicating with in the chat when I was suggesting that we have a spot to meet up at when we get to the airport. So I'm on the phone with my cousin, and Mariah is basically like, oh, we don't need that because the driver is going to come back and forth at different times, and we land sooner. So now the time slots for these when the planes were landing were like very close. It wasn't super far apart. So it was like 11:30, 12 p.m., 11:45, like that's how close it was. And then we had a few, like 2 to 3 people that were landing around like 2 p.m. But for the most part, it was very, very close. So because of this, Mariah said that we did not need a spot to meet up in the airport because the driver, we're going to have 2 drivers, or the driver's going to make multiple trips back from the Airbnb to the airport. So it was no need for us to find somewhere to meet up at. Please keep this part in mind. So I let it go because it's very obvious that Mariah is against us having a meet spot. I don't know why, but she's against it. So I was like, you know what? Whatever. The trip is getting closer. So now I'm asking more questions. So I asked in the chat, I'm like, hey, are we paying each way for the cab? Because the driver quoted us like a lump sum of how much we're gonna have to pay. So I'm like, okay, so are we paying that up front? Do we pay that after? Are we paying each way? And I was told no. And then he said no. He sent a breakdown of how much everything was gonna cost, and that was that. So I was just looking at the screenshot, and it just looked as if we were going to be paying like a lump sum of money for one way, but it really ended up being we were paying each way, but we'll get to that. So after that, that was the last time we spoke. That was the last clarity I felt like I needed. Oh, before then, I asked them what we were doing for dinner, because the only thing what we were going to do for food in general, since we weren't staying on a resort, I asked them, are we going to be going to breakfast? Like, are we only going to dinner? Like, what are we doing food wise? And I'm like, are we eating on the side of the road? Like, what's the plan? And they just decided to eat on the side of the road in this country, which is a thing. I don't mind, like, I didn't care, but I just needed to know, like, what were we doing? I needed a full itinerary so I could know and be aware once I got there. All right, so I'm going to stop the video here, and I'm gonna save part 3, and I'm gonna do the full breakdown of every single thing that happened that day. And this is when, I know I said in the last story time, like, it gets crazy, and I'm going to start the story here. But I needed to lay the groundwork of everything we had a conversation about in this video. So I asked them if we could have a meeting spot in the airport. The answer I got was no. I asked were you paying each way for the taxi. The answer was no. And I got a breakdown of what it was going to be. Next was the Airbnb. We traded the Airbnb up for something a little cheaper. And the original price that I'm gonna save that part for the end, but we traded the Airbnb up for something cheaper. That was that. I was told for dinner that the birthday girls wear white and everybody else wears brown. Wait, but I didn't go over how, when I asked again for clarity, they said that only the birthday girls. 1 second. So I went back in to check. It was a little bit confusion, because I just wanted to make sure, like, I was remembering right. So I remember it being like the birthday girls wear white, everybody else browns and nudes. Then it was like some like kind of confusion. I'll screenshot everything and just put it in here, where it was just like, okay, like F it. And so I was just like, okay, so I brought 2 dress options. So I brought a cream, like white kind of dress, and then I brought like a nude, well, like a very light nude dress, and then a black one. All right, now, so I'm gonna leave it here at around the 5-minute mark. Come back for part 3, because when I say y'all are about to see, y'all gonna see like the trajectory of how I ended up being a 0, how I went from being a hero to a 0 on a damn girls trip. All right, like this video, comment, and I will be sharing part 3.